And thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. Tonight, attempting to reverse the community infections, the next phase of the COVID-19 fight. And that is where we are tonight on this battle to win this war. Let me quickly go through for you the updates we have, and then we'll go into community infections. As you know by now, many of the cases we have, some of them we now know have no history of travel, which means that transmissions have happened locally, and that is what we mean community infections. And is the word and phrase that many of the experts feared, but it's upon us. So this is where a lot of the focus is right now, and there's talk about changing our case definition in the wake of that. And so we'll go through that. What is the update so far? Ghana's confirmed COVID-19 cases, we know, stands at 24. We're getting reports that this may have been updated in the last few minutes on the Ghana Health Service page. We'll get confirmation for you. The possibility that one more person may have died from the COVID-19 case in Ghana, and the cases rising even further. That confirmation will come very shortly. Stay with us as this really unfolds in the coming hours. We also know that the last few cases also suggest there are now community transmissions, particularly the 11th case. We now know that the 11th case is dead. The Lebanese person, the trader in Ashanti region, died and was recently buried. But that particular individual had no history of traveling, and so that suggests that he may have contracted the virus locally. Many more people we are finding recently have also done same, contracting the virus locally. That is community infections. It's not imported. So you can juxtapose imported cases, that's many of the cases we had in the first initial days, as against those that originate from Ghana and maybe spreading in the community. Now, in terms of the timelines, as of March 22nd, we have a total of 575 contacts, huge number, which is set to go up, by the way, and had been identified and are being tracked, traced, and dealt with. A lot of the health officials are involved in this going forward. It's a hard part of the job, tracking down people who may have come in contact with people who are positive for coronavirus. We also know all cases were recorded in Accra and Kumasi so far. We haven't had any case beyond these two cities, which many say is a good thing. But now that a lot of testing is going to be done, if you listen to the president, he said that in his speech. Health officials say we are in dangerous times. The number of confirmed cases may escalate in the coming days. In fact, the health minister himself is on record last week to have made that exact point about these new uncharted times that we find ourselves in. Also tonight, government in the last few days have put in additional measures, we know, including the closure of the land, air, sea borders to human traffic. The immigration officials are enforcing that strictly. The Imposition of Restrictions Act has also been passed. The president has assented to it. Enforcement is beginning across the country tonight. This was assented over the weekend, and the officials are about to enforce that. Parliament is also bearing the brunt of this. There are 275 MPs cramped up into a chamber. That is not social distancing, as the experts have advised, and so they are considering moving Parliament to a bigger house, which is a conference center, to accommodate all the MPs, so you can meet these social distancing restrictions that we all have to comply with in these times. Now, as the number of confirmed cases increase, there is heightened tension among the populace, with many calling for a shutdown, lockdown. And in fact, many countries in Europe and in America are on lockdown tonight. UK is joining that particular theme. It appears almost every country gets to a point where you have to lock it down. Some say Ghana should do that now before it gets out of hand. We'll try and find out from my guests tonight whether that is something they're advising in the wake of what we're seeing. Now, there have also been concerns about the availability of the country's health facilities, the inability of the country's health facilities to deal with higher numbers if confirmed cases go up. Now, but this is a problem that all countries across the world are facing, finding out that the health system aren't able to cope. Italy far more advanced health infrastructure than we have are struggling to cope with this. And in America, they're deploying military ships to try and augment the numbers there of births. There are also suggestions that the transportation from Accra to Kumasi even should be also be affected with the restrictions, including domestic flights, because it's Accra and Kumasi so far. And so if you stop people from traveling within these two cities, then Kumasi cases aren't traveling to Accra, Accra cases aren't traveling to Kumasi. You can then deal with the Accra cases exclusively and control that, and so we don't have further spreading across these two cities. Is that something that the authorities will consider? We'll try and find answers for you tonight. The big question tonight, we're going to explore the next phase and how to reverse the community transmission. You want to stay with us. The very latest updates coming up here on PM Express. Thank you very much for staying with us here on PM Express tonight. My guest in the studio is Alexander Abban, who is the Deputy Health Minister. He's been very busy, as you can imagine, having a lot of meetings today. Thank you, Ms. Abban, for your time here on PM Express.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we are obviously implementing social distancing. And so we will speak to Dr. Owusu, Dr. Michael Owusu. He is a virologist, Department of Medical Diagnostics, KNUST, KNUST, also a researcher there at KCCR, the second institution in Ghana mandated to do the testing. And he is an excellent mind in this particular area. He will join us also via Skype from Kumasi shortly, and as we begin to unpack a lot of the details that we are beginning to learn, but also mainly dealing with this next major threat of community infections. So, Ms. Abban, I know you've had a lot of meetings today. What's the update from the ministry's point of view on the virus, but also the efforts to try and deal with it?
Thank you very much. Good evening to you, and good evening to cherished viewers. I must say I'm very tired. But it is for God and country. So let's deal with the updates. Official update. In fact, I was trying to also go back to the website.
And there are reports tonight about a possible increase in the number of fatalities. An additional one person, we understand, may have died. We're trying to check that for you. The website is difficult to load. Anytime they update it, it's difficult to. In fact, the website is down. So once we get that confirmation for you, we'll bring that to you. And it's possible also that the number of confirmed cases may have now risen also to 27 from 24. And so, yes, before the show ends, we'll see if we can get that clarity for you.
Thank you. As of now, we have 24 cases. I don't know if you want all the breakdowns.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Probably, if I should start from here, we have, okay, I'll later come here. We have 24 cases. If you do the breakdown of male and female, according to, that is, according to, then we have 17 here, because there's 5, 10, 15, 17 for male, Okay, and then we have the rest for female.
So we have more males infected than there are females.
Yes, and then if we go in terms of age distribution, we have between 21 and 30.
For Ghana?
Yes,
we have infected people who are 21.
That's for Ghana.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay. 21 to 30, we have 2.
2 cases. Okay.
31 to 40, we have 7. 41 to 50, we have 3. 51 to 60, we have 6. And then above 60, we have 5.
Okay.
And the distribution of COVID cases by transmission type. There's distribution.
Yeah.
Okay, of COVID-19 cases by age. Distribution of COVID cases by transmission type. Imported cases, 17, right?
Yeah.
And then country transmission. We had
3?
No, 17 here because we had 24 at
24. So that's that we are talking about in the region of if it's 17 is imported, you said.
Yes. Oh, this is as at 22nd March.
Yeah.
That is 2 days ago. Yes. So we had 17 here, and then we had 5 here.
Okay, so 5 of them local transmissions.
Yes.
Okay. Which has been the biggest fear for most of the scientists and the health professionals working?
That's exactly what we all fear.
Yeah.
Because what it means then is that for those who imported it and brought it to the country, they have succeeded, if I should put it that way, right?
And infecting others locally.
Infecting others.
Yeah.
Yes. What is making it even more scary is the fact that you read the recent articles and findings on the virus and realize that contrary to the initial thinking that it is human to human, just that, and may not be airborne after all, now the evidence, I mean, from the WHO and from other people who are well versed in this and have made the research, it means that as at now, according to them, the virus can be airborne for as long as 8 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe it will be simplistic, but I'm thinking that, for instance, it means that if I have it and probably I cough here and the droplets stay in the air around here and I just pass by, and maybe after me some other person should also pass my pathway, either in the opposite direction or behind me, probably
the person can be infected by inhaling the droplets.
those droplets.
Let me bring in an expert in this area, Dr. Michael Owusu.
This one I'm thinking about.
Yes, yeah, but I want to bring in an expert. I mean, to clarify that they've been doing the research on this. Dr. Michael Owusu is a research scientist at the Department of Medical Diagnostics at the KNUST, and he's a researcher at the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research. That is the second institution in Ghana tasked to do testing for the COVID-19. Dr. Michael Owusu, thank you for joining us here on PM Express.
Thank you very much.
Grateful that you could join me. Let's quickly clarify this virus as we all learn about it. The WHO, I know, and there have been reports in the last few days that suggest that it is now possibly airborne. What is the latest research saying about that? So that we can all begin to adopt even more stringent measures on that particular front. What does the research say about that?
So the issue of airborne has been known about coronaviruses over the years. For SARS coronavirus, for MERS coronavirus, and for the recent ones. except that the aggressiveness with which it infects is what differentiates this one from the other ones. So even before WHO made that statement initially that it wasn't airborne, there were research available that if you deposit a respiratory droplet on surfaces, what happens is that as these droplets dry up, they can be carried up on particles that are suspended. And as these particles move through the air, they are able to get access to the respiratory tract through the nose and then cause infection. This is why theoretically you want to leave a distance of 2 meters. The reason being that you assume that if the droplets are 2 meters from you, by the time they move within that distance, they may dissipate and not be able to infect. That was the science behind saying that stay 2 meters away from those people who have the disease because of the potential for the virus to remain suspended on particles and to move and be inhaled into the system. So this is right. Initially, WHO was not too clear, but the evidence as we speak now seems to be pointing to a possible airborne, which makes it quite difficult for anybody to control.
A face mask, a valid and effective tool for dealing with the virus?
Of course, face masks is good and effective, but if you look at the strategy for dealing with this outbreak, you want to reserve face mask to the health workers who are mostly at risk and where most aerosols are generated in their work. For those people, once you practice social distancing, it should be enough that even if somebody coughs and does not cover the nose, the distance between you and the person should give you some level of protection. And this is important because, if you generalize and say that everybody should put on face masks, you don't want to get to a point where health workers who need this as part of their work don't find it, don't get it. They are people dealing with the heavy load of the virus. So if they don't have it, then you should expect that they will be exposed the more. So averagely, practicing social distancing is important. If you have the disease, if you have the virus, we advise you to put on masks so that you don't spill these aerosols into the air for others to get it. So strategically, you want to reserve all the face masks and all the nose masks for our health workers to use and for those who have the disease to cover their nose, and then encourage the public to use what we call the social distancing, staying 2 meters away, so that in case somebody either exhales the virus or coughs, you have some amount of distance to allow the virus to dissipate in the air and not infect the person.
Okay, I want to focus on something that the president talked about and has been a concern for a lot of people. We've seen the world over, testing has become a key tool in the fight against the COVID-19. Last week, the WHO advised all countries to test. Mr. Abban, I want to focus. The president said that we are expecting, 50,000 test kits to arrive. Give us an update on that. Has it arrived yet? When will it arrive? Do we know?
As at the time that I was coming to the studio, I had not got any information that they had arrived. But with the discussions that I have had with those from Ghana Health Service, I don't think it is going to take too long to arrive. So let us just hope that within the few days they will arrive.
In terms of what we have so far, do we know the quantity of what we have already?
There have been some distribution of some of these items.
The test kits,
the test kits. I cannot tell for sure how many that we have. I'm sure those at Noguchi and KCCR may be in even a better position to give the minute details as to numbers, those that have been used and those that remain with them. But I don't think at this time we have any shortage. So because the testing is actually going on.
Yes, but it's only 2 places, right? Noguchi and KLCC where Doc works.
Yes.
The WHO is advising test. We have only 2 places. that becomes a challenge. Why can't we, is there a policy that later on might look at decentralizing the tests, that all hospitals can at least do the testing?
You see, I have asked...
because so far it's only Accra and Kumasi, because
yes,
obviously those are the places where we have test kits. But if you decentralize, you might actually find out there are other cases elsewhere. Then you can actually deal with it.
Not necessarily, because... but I have questioned, I've also asked a similar question. Okay. My briefing or my information is that it is Kumasi and Accra, because these are the places that the WHO itself has accredited. Okay, so there are other places that we may have some laboratories where they can do all these tests and all that, but they have not been pre-qualified. You know, the WHO and the World Health, they have their own.
But the world is moving very quickly. I mean, we can learn the lessons from elsewhere.
Yes.
In the US, they're doing drive-through tests. They also struggled to test in the beginning. Now they're ramping up testing. They're doing drive-through tests. We are in the UK where they're also struggling to test it, but they're also coming along now to do. Testing is the best way we've had to deal with this. And so I get you about WHO accreditation, but shouldn't we adopt a more aggressive testing strategy just because?
Yes. So we had a meeting this afternoon. We discussed this. The Association of Laboratory Science Practitioners, so they came, told us that the very machine, if I should put it that way, in a layman's point, that the two places are using are also available in other places. And this afternoon, to Dr. Insiansari, the presidential advisor on health, also said that yes, there are other places where the same mechanism is. They need to be calibrated, and then we can do testing there. And I'm sure that for as long as it is the same kind of mechanism that WHO has pre-qualified or qualified for KCCR and Noguchi, I don't think it would be out of place for us to extend it to those places where the same mechanism or the same machine is found. So I would not be surprised that we will extend our tentacles to those places with the support, active support of those who are well versed in these matters, because they came for that meeting this afternoon.
Dr. Wusu, let me bring you in here. Your department, your facility does the testing as well, one of the accredited areas, apart from Noguchi. Should we decentralize the testing?
We have no choice but to do this, and decentralization is not an option we will want to avoid in this critical stage. And I was trying to go through what the Honorable Minister, the figures that he gave, and I think he did mention that we have 6 community cases.
Yeah.
For me, this is the most important reason why it is very critical for us to decentralize the test. We have control over the imported cases and their contact tracing. But for the community cases, we have no idea what they are doing in the community. And especially if they are in the young population, we should expect that the rate of transmission of the virus will begin to increase as an exponential level. This virus has a reproductive number of about 2.5 to 3. What it means is that if you have the case at any unit time, you are able to give it to 3 people, so that as you mix, about those 3 can give to another 3 in every 1 hour. So if you don't find your primary cases, which are the 7, you can predict that in the next 2 to 4 weeks, these 7 people will just spread this at different levels. And what it means is that you don't want to use the definition of having traveled from an affected country or having managed somebody who has the disease as a criteria for testing. But then anybody who comes with coughing, with fever, with difficulty breathing will have to be tested. And the other difficulty is that we are getting to the wet season where people may have flu. That you may not, it's difficult to tell whether their flu is due to any normal form of virus or due to the COVID. So at this stage, what countries like Singapore did and Korea did was that they did what we call a community-enhanced surveillance system where they aggressively tested people. It wasn't passive. They moved to the communities. They asked if people are having cold, and they tested them. And by doing this, they were able to bring out the people who were positive and isolated from the community. This is what gave them upper hand in reducing the epidemic curve, for which they were successful at doing this. So I agree that the WHO has accredited the two facilities like KCCR and the WHO. But we can learn from other countries like the US, where they had to amend their Clinical Laboratory Improvement Acts, and FDA had to offer waiver for labs that do not test pathogens like this at the level of BSL-3 to begin to test and provide the means for them to do. There are portable devices which can be used at the various borders and the hospitals for them to begin to do this. And I think that it is the way to go in this critical period. The countries have done it. They have done it in China, they have done it in Korea, they are doing it in Germany. And as a matter of fact, some of them have these devices which can be used. Some of them were set up during the Ebola season where they have tents with portable PCR devices that were tested. You know, the WHO strategy is that you test, you trace, you test, you treat, you manage. And when the people recover, you retest to ensure that they are clear of the virus and you release them in the community. So for me, the strategy for us is to do an aggressive testing. And to do an aggressive testing, KCCR and Noguchi will not be enough. I cannot imagine those who are at the borders who have to travel for 6 to 8 hours to send their samples to the site. And you can imagine if you have an increase in community cases which gradually disseminates to the other communities, where traveling to the two centers becomes difficult, then you have no option. Your people may have severe disease, they may be stuck several distance away from the testing site, and this is not the way we have to go. I think that the option of looking for testing options is something that we need to consider more aggressively at this stage. And like the minister mentioned, once you are at the community phase, you don't know what is happening. As of now, we cannot estimate the real burden of the disease. We don't know. We are only testing what becomes available. But the people who are incubating in the community and those who are shedding and spreading, we are yet to see how this will play out. But the other thing that play out only if they show up at the hospital. But you should take note that some of them may go to the pharmaceutical communities and buy drugs. These are hotspots you may want to use to find those people. And when you are able to track their movement and know where the hotspot, then you can offer appropriate intervention, which will be directly at communities that are affected. For instance, if you know clusters of cases are happening at a certain community, you can order for a total close down of the communities and move in to test people who are there. But without this data, it becomes very, very difficult to offer any interventions. The interventions will basically be theoretical, where you want to copy what others have done. But our social structure is in such a way that we need some good data, and the data will be provided from testing. So testing for me is not an option. We have to make sure that as soon as possible, this testing becomes available to as many laboratories as possible for them to inform us as what is happening, so that we can properly direct our intervention to curb this.
This show is to explore how we can reverse the community transmissions. It appears from what you're saying that testing is the primary tool for dealing and reversing the community transmissions that we know is happening in our communities.
Exactly.
Let me ask you, how much does it cost to test a case?
It should cost something not more than $100 to test a case.
Goodness me. I mean, $100 per case. That is,
yes.
That is expensive, is it not? I mean, for a country like Ghana, I mean, and the sort of testing that you are proposing, mass testing for community, will cost us millions of dollars.
Yes, this is part of the cost that we need to be prepared and begin to use. We have no option as we speak now, because PCR test is quite expensive. Looking at the logistics that you have to use, working on the extractions of the processes. So this is the reality. And when we come to this stage, you will need a lot of investment from the government to be able to resolve the sectors for them to do. And unfortunately, we have no choice as of now. Our best option is to be able to procure this equipment, although they are expensive, and deploy them for you. The only way that we get informed
let me
data
ask you about that then. The president announced over the weekend in his address that we are getting 50,000 test kits into the country. How many test kits does KCCR have now already? Do we know?
Yeah, so we have quite enough test kits to test over 10,000 cases. We have quite enough, and these are test kits which have mainly been supported by a lot of projects which are running in the institute.
Okay.
We have promised the government that the government is about giving us several tens of thousands of kits, and we are still hoping to receive this to enable us to do more.
Will the 50,000 the president announced, will it be enough?
So from my estimation, the 50,000 is a good step taken by the president, and I was quite happy that he mentioned it and having considered that with this test kit. But it's not enough. If you look at the infectivity of the virus and the fact that as we speak now, because of our social structure, we still have some form of mingling ongoing, transports, movements, community spread. You should expect that close to 40% of people will be exposed in the next 1 month or two.
40% of the population.
You should expect this to happen if the trend goes on as it is going. Because the virus spreads at a very faster rate. So if you look at population for instance, in Kumasi, close to about 4 million, if you make the projection and the fact that you want everybody coughing, having sneezing, and having difficulty to come and test, then you want to inject more resources. I'm looking at things close to 200,000 test kits for Kumasi and over 300 test kits for Noguchi to enable them to attend to a lot of the cases that may come in. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, we should expect that whoever coughs, has fever, and is sneezing will be directed by the doctors to come to the testing sites, because you may not know that they have it or not. And to do this aggressive testing, you will want to have more resources. So the 50,000 is good, but I want to believe that having more of this in stock will help us to be able to estimate the burden of this COVID and be able to have appropriate intervention to target this.
Stay with me. Your reaction to that?
Oh, fantastic submission. They are the people directly in charge of these things, right? So if that's what he says, we take it on board, right? But it doesn't mean that when the president said that 50,000 test kits would be brought, that is the end of it, because we are in a contingency. So as and when you go along, your movement are dictated by the surrounding circumstances. So if that's what he says, well and good. I believe we'll have further discussions on this, and the president, being a listening president, would know the next line of action to take. We are only hoping that we are able to contain the numbers, because it is not as though we know that, okay, 7 people have got through contact in the country, or through some kind of community spreading, and so we should just leave it there. As I speak with you, we have done contact tracing of as many as 598 persons. So that exercise is also going on. But the fear, as he expressed, and which I share, is that because of our social structure, the way things are, it's not like man, wife, and children to call, as the family. As far as Ghana is concerned, that is only a basic unit of family, but we all belong to larger families that we try to associate with.
Even that cough becomes a suspicion for testing, absolutely, yes.
No, mine is actually born out of fatigue and nothing more. So you see that we all try to mingle out with people. We have different associations, church, and thankfully that has been stopped. But for those who think that where we have reached, we still have to congregate before people will realize that we are praying, please don't try to make the work just too difficult for us and for themselves too. So we have these associations going on, definitely people do visit friends, right? Even though we say social distancing and all that, sometimes even involuntarily, people would want to hug, people would want to shake hands and all that. Some people may even shake hands before they remember the injunction on all of us.
The minute you do that, wash your hands with running water or use hand sanitizer.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's a message. I want to come back to something he said there. Three quick things. First, he says he's estimating that by the time this is over, 40% of our population may have been infected. In fact, in Germany, the chancellor estimated up to 70% of the population. Have we done our own projections as to how bad this could get before it gets better, and that can then inform planning?
It depends. I think that...
What numbers is government, what models are you looking at right now in terms of the planning purposes in the next 1 week, in the next 2 weeks? All countries are doing that now. You're doing projections as to how many infections you expect.
I guess here I would defer to a person like Dr. Bedusa Akodie.
Okay.
Right? They should be able to...
No, but in the meetings you sat in, I mean, that should have definitely come up.
That meeting, he was not even part of it, but I don't think it is too late for us to look at the numbers, right?
But have you done so? Have we done so?
Personally, no. But
has the
looking
ministry...
at, I mean, if the examples around the world,
yeah,
okay, anything to go by, and looking at the pace at which the community infection is moving, right? I would not be surprised, but it is my hope.
They'll not be surprised that
the 40%
of the population
threshold that he's talking about could be the case. But I think that because of the vigorous nature with which they are doing the contact tracing, if we are all going to collaborate with the health authorities, we should be able to avert that.
So let me come back to some of the specifics. So he says it costs about $100 per test. That's a lot of money for a country like Ghana.
Yes.
I mean, and you're doing 550,000. Even that is not enough.
That's 550 Ghanaians.
That's exactly. That's a lot of money for Ghanaians to do. Many people can afford it, so government will have to take the burden. Now it comes back to, do we have the funds? We were promised $100 million. Is the money available? That question is still not been answered.
What I know is that the Minister for Finance had initiated moves to access that money.
Okay.
So
that's where we are. We still haven't accessed it yet.
Oh, we have already made certain expenses against it. So to that extent,
and
I would say
that expense is coming from where? How are we funding that immediate short-term expense?
Oh, obviously, from the Ministry of Health, we cannot sit by and say that, okay, we have to wait for everything to get to us. And we know that the presidency also released, Ministry of Finance also released some money to be used at least in the interim, right, as he goes through the process of assessing that amount of money. And like I said, because it's a contingency, nobody should expect that 100 million will be brought, boom, here, take it, right? Otherwise, you may even spend unnecessarily because we know we are dealing with Ghanaians. People have started asking issues of accountability and all that. Let me give this assurance that we do not intend to misuse people's money, especially in situations like this. So people should rest assured, Ghanaians should rest assured. We would account for every penny that is used. I can give that assurance on behalf of my minister and on behalf of the government. Let me say that because it is a contingency, you must always be careful in your purchases, because you may either purchase too little or too much. If you're able to curb it, before you realize some of the things that you may have purchased, okay, in anticipation of dealing with the virus or dealing with the situation, I want to speak generally, in general terms, would not have been spent. And I'm sure later, as far as we are in Ghana, those our politicians will take that as a matter for discussion. Look, the way they have gone to spend the money, they should have just bought this little, and they have bought so much. I remember that, if I should use that as an example, where some people were castigating a ministry or a department for having printed some letterheads which would last for how many years, and then they all went waste just because there were certain changes, right? So in all situations, especially when it is it's a contingency, you are making funds available in readiness for a contingency. You have to be very careful the way you make your purchases. It is very normal.
Quick few questions, and I can now confirm the page has now...
has it come up now?
Yes, it has. I mean,
okay.
So the Ghana Health Services is updating us. So we have 27 confirmed cases, 27 confirmed cases now. Existing, that is those who are alive out of the 27, it's 25. So again, it's true that we have 2 deaths so far, 2 deaths. So the number of deaths have increased from 1 to 2. So 1 more death has just been recorded. And this is as of 8:28 tonight. This is a short 1 hour ago, just over 1 hour ago, that this was updated. I'm getting the breakdown for you in terms of the cases that had come in. You know, they'll always provide the details of this. A total of 522 suspected cases have been tested for COVID-19 at Noguchi and KCCR. Now, out of the suspected case, 27 cases, including 2 deaths, have been confirmed. All 25 confirmed cases are receiving treatment in isolation, and so that is important. Among the confirmed cases, 20 are Ghanaian nationality, majority of whom return home from affected countries. 7 are of other nationalities, namely Norway, Lebanon, China, France, and UK. Now, in respect of the contact tracing, a total of 598 contacts have been identified and are being tracked. Now, one of the contacts developed symptoms and has been confirmed positive. So that is an important thing to note also. 19 people have completed the 14 days of mandatory follow-up. And so that is a key thing to observe from this. And so if you're just joining us, I'm sure you probably have seen this on social media already, that the 2 cases have now been confirmed dead as a result of coronavirus in Ghana. And the cases have risen now from 24 to 27. I'm going to take a break. When I return, we're going to delve into the case for a total lockdown. Stay with us. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us here on PM Express. My guest is still in the studio. Is still the Deputy Health Minister, Mr. Abban, who has been sharing with us the latest on this from the government point of view. Also joining me via Skype is Dr. Wusu with the KCCR in Kumasi. Just before the break, the website that updates us on the cases, in fact, finally came up because it's been down since the update at around 8:30, just over an hour ago. And the confirmation is that we have 27 cases now, a jump from 24. And we have a second case that has now with fatality. Your quick reaction to that? This is something that the health ministry is having to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, you grapple with this every day, and sometimes it's very disheartening, right? Because it is our hope that we do not record it, but it's a fact of life, and it has happened. So for now, if the information on the website is anything to go by, it means that the number has increased by 3, right?
Yeah,
because we
from
had
24 to 27.
24.
Yes.
And then we have had 27, and then 2 deaths.
That must concern you greatly.
Extremely. I'm very much concerned, because to lose 1 life is just too many, if I should put it that way. So, especially if it turns out that maybe it is somebody in his or her prime. We have actually not, because we have just read it from the website, I have no cause to doubt it. But as regards the sex, the age of this new case, I'm unable to talk about it because we have just got it from the website. But whatever it is, even if it's an old person, it is still sad that the story would be that that person had to succumb to the vagaries of this COVID-19 virus.
So clearly, this is going to alarm a lot of people. We started off with what, two, which is last 2 weeks, Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. So
the president addressed the nation on a Wednesday. I remember. That's 2 weeks.
I mean, we've moved very rapidly, because last week Thursday was exactly a week, and we are 17. We're talking about Monday. We have 27. It appears this is, nobody wants to scare anybody, right? But the reality is good, so people can begin to take appropriate measures.
Yes.
This is going to get worse before it gets better.
It looks like.
You know,
yeah.
We will definitely have more deaths, but nobody wants that. But clearly, from what we've seen around the world, it looks like this is where we are getting to now.
Yeah, but we should not also run away from the fact that, especially in the first case, I do not have any facts on the second case.
On the second case, it hasn't been provided on the website.
But on the first case, you realize that the man had other underlying comorbidity, if I should put it that way.
And I need to say something on that. The reason why I'm emphasizing the point about possible deaths is this. One of the things we need to do, especially if you're a young person, you're listening to this and thinking, well, I'm not going to be affected, is this. If you don't act to enforce social distancing and wash your hands, etc., and you take it for granted, and they say, don't go to the beach, you do. Don't go to a party, you do. And you get infected. Yes, you may not die, but the elderly people who you love may be most vulnerable to getting the infection from you, and as a result of that, you put them in great jeopardy of possibly losing their lives. And that is why you need to take this absolutely important, because those old folks, your mom, your grandparent that you love, they're the most susceptible because of possible underlying health conditions that COVID-19 exploits. And that is why we all must take this absolutely seriously and not joke with it and say, I'm young. US found that out to its shock and horror. Italy, same. And that's what I was asking about. Lives are going to be lost, but we can do something about it if we all take it seriously, because our parents are most at risk of death from this. You know, I want to bring in the Dr. Wusu on the case for lockdown. Doc, very briefly, as we begin to wrap up, now that the confirmation has come, one more death. Some say this is the time to lock the two cities, if not Ghana, down. What do you say?
So I look at this two angles. Ideal situation would be to go for a lockdown. But what type of lockdown do we want to go for? Is it a total lockdown? Is a selective lockdown? So I will go for selective lockdown, which is informed by evidence of data. And this is quite important because I believe strongly that there are hotspots and clusters where disease is currently circulating, where we need to have information and data on these hotspots. That once we have hotspots, we can map these hotspots out and close the hotspots. Because you must look at this in terms of not just from a public health perspective, but also an economic perspective. We have to 60% of us in the informal sector, and there are many that they take their income on a daily basis as and when they go to market. So if you want to put all this into perspective, then you want to take a gradual approach where you have evidence of circulation or hotspots around the country where people are actively circulating the virus. So you can target your interventions at these hotspots. Then later on, As this increases and widens, then you want to gradually move towards a total
So
shutdown.
if I may ask you to be very specific a bit, because of sake of time, which hotspots right now should government be focusing on in terms of the lockdown now?
We will know this when we do aggressive testing of the communities where
I guess it comes back to that.
Okay, this is what we need to do. All the contact traces where the community transmissions occurred and all the places where we identify the people. We should be able to do an aggressive testing of all people with similar close conditions. Then we can be well informed. My fear is that a total shutdown of the two cities may be quite difficult for a number of people in the informal sector. And the very people that want to eat well and they get immune system to be able to fight may be weakened due to hunger.
As a result of that, I want to quickly give the final word to the minister on that question about shutdown and lockdown. What's your own take on that?
Thank you very much. Every day, the interministerial team meets with the president himself chairing. They assess the situation. And if it should get there, like he said, selective lockdown, probably. If it gets to that point, probably the president would issue the necessary fiats for it. I'm not in a position to say definitively that that's what the president would do. But the team would have to weigh all the options, having regard to the surrounding circumstances. And I was saying that our surest bet to see whether we are going to have